afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be taking part in the 2021 World Ocean Forum, albeit of course many of us are meeting virtually this year. But this event is no less important as a result. I do extend all my good wishes though to everyone in Busan. This is a crucial period for the maritime and marine sectors. That's why the title for this year's forum is so apposite. This really does have to be a period of ocean transformation. At the core of virtually all the debates today about the future of our oceans and those who depend on them lies the question of smart environmental management for the future. Whether it's about curtailing carbon emissions for the maritime sector, the future of fisheries, or the need to protect and restore marine habitats, change is definitely on the way. To me, the real question is whether the maritime industries anticipate and lead that change, or whether they have it forced upon them. And the challenges are pretty stark. Shipping is one of the sectors at the heart of the debate about tackling climate change, but it does not yet have the technological solutions to deal with its climate challenges. And then there's marine pollution and habitat loss, as well as overfishing in many parts of the world, which are destroying vast populations of marine life, and in doing so, changing the character of our oceans. Illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing, IUU fishing in particular, directly exacerbates the global effects of overfishing. IUU fishing threatens the sustainability of fish populations, of ocean biodiversity and health, and communities that rely on fish for consumption and their local economies. In recent years, IUU fishing has also led to geopolitical tensions as the increase in distant water fishing fleets puts pressure on coastal countries' marine resources, both legal and illegal. Together, we must invest in capacity building around the world in order to help countries create, implement, and enforce fishing laws that deter IUU fishing. Across all oceans, it's imperative we manage our marine resources for global food, environmental, economic, and maritime security. If we want, ladies and gentlemen, healthy oceans on a healthy planet in a generation's time, now is the time for action. In the next few months, we'll see two major international forums, which we all hope will lead to substantial new agreements on environmental protection. In a couple of weeks' time, I will be attending part of the COP26 summit on climate change in Glasgow. It will be a major surprise and setback if that conference does not lead to a new global agreement on carbon reduction. And that agreement will inevitably have a major impact on the maritime industries. In 2022, COP16 in China will then aim to do the same for the protection of global biodiversity as well. And alongside all of this, there is a clear regulatory direction of travel to tackle these environmental challenges as well. The European Union recently published its strategy for carbon reduction, and in doing so, for the first time, clearly set international shipping at the heart of its strategy, with a decision to include maritime in its system of emission trading. Its future plans include a carbon levy applied to 50% of the emissions from a vessel arriving in an EU port. Ships in port will be required to tie into shore-based electricity rather than using their own engines while in port. There will also be a structured tax system to incentivize the use of clean fuels. In the spring, it was reported that the Chinese are poised to include shipping in their own emissions trading scheme. The United Kingdom has also committed itself to including international shipping in its overall targets for carbon reduction. The exact mechanism is yet to be detailed, but I expect more on this soon. And although the United States has also yet to set out clear plans on this front, it seems inevitable that the Biden administration, with a very clear focus on both carbon and broader environmental issues, will follow quickly. John Kerry said as much at a conference in April. And there is clear support for action in Congress, though legislators there are cautious about unilateral approaches. They do not want the US to take on extra burdens if others, particularly the Chinese, do not. All of this presents a big challenge for the International Maritime Organization and its members. The danger is that if several of the major economies set their own regulatory path, we will end up with a mélange of regulations that creates real operational difficulties for the maritime sector. For global sectors like maritime and aviation, I think a global approach is vital. And I believe the IMO must be the coordinating point for an upgraded global approach to the reduction of carbon emissions from shipping. Of course, it's not easy reaching agreement on a global scale. In an organization like the IMO, there are multiple different agendas. That's why it's been difficult for the IMO to reach the kind of stretch agreement that's needed, and why the strategies of organizations like the European Union are running ahead of it. I think, though, that it's essential in the next 12 months for the IMO member states to work collaboratively to shape that global and credible approach. There will have to be market-based measures to reduce carbon emissions from shipping. There needs to be a common set of rules around environmental issues in and around ports. There will need to be financial support for technological developments that can move the sector as fast as possible towards net zero. And there also needs to be targeted support towards developing countries that will enable them to develop the infrastructure they need to support their own net zero maritime strategies. None of this will be easy, particularly in a sector where the technological solutions are not yet within reach. The encouraging sign is that the industry knows it needs rapid technological change. Companies like Maersk are setting a clear path towards a sharp reduction in emissions. Others need to follow the same path. But the ultimate technological solution to carbon emissions from shipping is not yet with us. Hydrogen will play an important role in parts of the sector, particularly in and around ports. But its bulk makes it a more difficult option for longer distance carriers. Ammonia has potential and does not have the same bulk problem, but it's also a highly poisonous substance and has different environmental implications. Battery power can work for short distance ferries, but not long distance cruise ships. Maersk are focusing on ethanol right now, though it's not a zero emission fuel. The aviation sector faces a very similar challenge and is divided into those pursuing hydrogen as an option, initially for short haul flights. But perhaps more interestingly, many in that sector are pursuing synthetic fuels as an option. In the UK, Rolls-Royce is developing aero engine technology powered by fuel manufactured from carbon captured from the atmosphere, creating a net zero circle of fuel production and emission. It may well be that this is the best path for shipping as well. But whichever technology emerges as the best option for shipping, and frankly, I suspect the final answer will be a mix of options, depending on the market and size of vessel, regulation is going to drive that change. The sector should expect ever increasing costs from using traditional fossil fuels, particularly heavy fuel oils, as market-based measures and carbon trading embeds into the maritime world. In the end, the regulatory direction of travel has only one outcome for those who do not embrace this agenda: higher costs and diminishing market share. But the climate agenda is only one part of the ocean environmental challenge and one part of the transformation which is needed. The loss of species and habitats, combined with increased marine pollution, has done huge damage and it must be reversed. The European Environment Agency has warned that the loss of biodiversity is as big a danger to the planet as climate change. The Smithsonian in Washington estimates that nearly 2,500 marine species are endangered. Coral reefs and mangrove swamps are being damaged or destroyed. Overfishing is destroying marine populations. Coastal habitats close to human settlements are particularly badly affected. Yet there are hundreds of millions of people who depend on the oceans for their livelihoods. A decaying and dying ocean will destroy the lives of those people. Regulation is indeed moving slowly in the right direction with the creation of more and more marine protected areas. But outside nationally controlled waters, things are very different. With huge scale plastic pollution and industrial fishing on a massive scale, destroying marine populations. If there is going to be an ocean transformation, then these issues must be addressed. My view is that this industry needs to take ownership of improving the marine environment and work to reverse the decline. I talked earlier about the importance of market-based measures. I mentioned things that should be funded from the revenues from carbon trading in the marine sector, smarter technology, support for developing countries. But what must not happen is that shipping companies simply replace their research budgets with grants from an emission trading fund to spend on research. Nor must the money from emission trading just be used as general tax revenues for organisations like the EU or by national governments. This is money that will be coming from the negative environmental impacts of the industry, and a substantial part of the revenue from emission trading in the maritime sector must go to improving marine environments. And it is possible to make a major difference quickly. I was at a presentation in Washington recently by the confectionery company Mars. They are spending money on a series of projects around the world to restore damaged coral reefs. We've all seen the pictures, you've seen them, a seabed that was once covered in beautiful reefs turned into a pile of debris by pollution or damaging fishing practices. What the Mars projects have achieved is startling. By placing a network of iron frames onto the seabed, within less than 2 years, reefs are recovering, and after 3 years, they're full of fish and other species again. It's an extraordinary sight to see. Mangrove restoration is equally important. Currently, around 1.9% of the world's mangroves are thought to be lost each year. Yet they're not only vital absorbers of carbon and important habitats for coastal species, they also provide protection to coastal communities against severe storms. There are many bold targets to restore these lost habitats, but all too often they remain targets and aspirations. Few people involved in seeking to restore those ecosystems believe we're anywhere near to achieving the goals we need to meet. But these issues are rising further and further up the agenda. I expect tougher regulations around the protection of the marine environment in Europe, in North America, in Asia. But it's more than regulation. I also expect consumer and investor pressure on businesses to demonstrate they're doing much more to protect and improve the environment. In the City of London, more and more investment businesses are finding their investors demanding information about their green credentials. Consumers are also increasingly looking for products with green credentials. Now, the aviation sector has been a particular target as flight shaming as a concept gathers momentum and political pressure grows for restrictions such as taxes on frequent flyers and bans on frequent flyer schemes. But I should say, I do not believe the maritime sector is going to be far behind as environmental groups step up their campaigns against industries that have a negative impact on the natural world. But of course, maritime is a sector that cannot simply transform itself overnight. We can ban petrol and diesel cars in a decade's time, and many countries are doing so. But it's wholly unrealistic to believe that we can have a net zero maritime sector in the same time frame. Even if the right technologies become clear as this decade passes, it will take a significant amount of time to transform the global shipping fleet. So what then can the maritime sector do right now to achieve the first stage of that ocean transformation? What Mars is doing, restoring reefs, is hugely valuable. But this is the kind of thing that should be funded through emission trading funds from within this sector and from around the world. So should industrial scale efforts to recover plastic from the vast areas now covered in waste. And the resulting material gained from that work should be used for recycling. So should restoration work in areas of damaged mangroves, or the replanting of seagrass, both of which can improve habitats and, crucially, also absorb carbon. This is an agenda which the maritime industry can grasp right now. So what does an ocean transformation really look like going forward? It should drive globally coordinated regulation to push technological change for the sector. That regulation should incentivize a rapid move to net zero shipping, and I think it must do so for the United Nations 2050 net zero target. The IMO must be at the heart of this. It cannot be done as a bits and pieces approach around the world. Then it should be technology neutral, because different technologies will play a part in different parts of the sector. It should move as quickly as possible to discourage the use of environmentally damaging technologies and to levy a charge on those who use those technologies. But the money levied from carbon trading should not simply be recycled as taxation or a replacement for existing budgets. It should genuinely help to transform the ability of the industry to improve the quality of the marine environment. Ladies and gentlemen, a transformed ocean will be a healthy ocean, and it is the job of the maritime sector to take a lead in ensuring that our oceans are properly restored to health over the next generation. Thank you.